But when people try to argue that she's not the face of our league,
Yeah.
or if our league would be where we're at without her, you're literally dumb as fuck.
Jealousy of Caitlin Clark was the topic of conversation. Sophie Cunningham was criticizing those who refused to acknowledge that Caitlin Clark is the face of the WNBA.
Cunningham letting it all out and not holding back. She calls out the old guard. She calls out the people out there who refuse to say Caitlin Clark is the face of the league.
Finally, someone who gets it. Finally, someone in the WNBA who understands this thing called business.
Hey, Sophie. If they didn't like you then, they sure aren't going to.
Picture this for a second. You own a basketball team, and somehow you land the most beloved athlete the entire sport has ever seen. Your arena sells out every single night. TV ratings triple overnight. Sponsors are lining up at your door. Then, just months after a brutal playoff series where a rival coach watched her own players push, bruise, and bloody your young superstar, you turn around and hire that exact same coach to run your franchise. This isn't some hypothetical story. This is exactly what happened with the Indiana Fever. And it stayed quiet for a while until one of the league's boldest voices, Sophie Cunningham, finally broke it open on her podcast and said out loud what fans have been screaming at their screens for months. Today, we're breaking down this entire situation step by step. And by the time we're done, you'll understand exactly why so many diehard basketball fans think something is seriously wrong behind the scenes in the WNBA. But first, let's rewind and understand what Caitlin Clark actually means to this league. Because without that context, none of this outrage makes sense. Back in April 2024, the Indiana Fever used the #1 overall pick to draft Caitlin Clark out of the University of Iowa. This wasn't just another draft pick. This was a player who had spent 2 straight college seasons smashing records like they were nothing. By the time she left college, she had scored more points than any player in INA Division I history, men or women. Let that sink in for a moment. More points than Pete Maravich, more points than Kelsey Plum, more than anyone who had ever laced up sneakers at the college level. She brought a completely new brand of basketball with her. Deep three-pointers from way beyond the arc. No-look passes that left defenders frozen. Watching her felt less like watching a typical point guard and more like watching Steph Curry. And the eyeballs followed her everywhere. Her final college game pulled in more viewers than that same year's men's championship. The women's title game averaged 18.9 million viewers. Numbers like that had simply never happened before in this sport. So, when she landed with the Fever in May 2024, this wasn't just a basketball transaction. Overnight, the Fever became the hottest ticket in all of women's sports. Tickets that used to cost $15 or $20 were now selling for hundreds. Visiting arenas had to move to bigger venues just to keep up with demand. After more than 2 decades of players begging for it, the league finally approved charter flights. And nearly every player in that locker room will tell you exactly why that happened. But here's where things take a dark turn. Because not everyone in the league welcomed her with open arms. Not even close. From her very first preseason game, it was obvious Caitlin Clark would have to earn her place the hard way. Veterans had a phrase for it, paying your dues. And night after night, they made sure she paid. Just weeks into her rookie season, Chondandy Carter of the Chicago Sky shoulder-checked Clark to the ground on a dead ball, meaning the play was already over. She got launched to the floor well after the whistle. The league first called it a common foul. Only after public backlash and viral replays did they upgrade it to a flagrant. But the message had already landed. Welcome to the league, rookie. Weeks later, Diamond Shields of the same Chicago Sky knocked her down again. Again away from the ball, again upgraded to a flagrant after the fact. Same script, different night, different opponent. Then came June 17th, 2025 against the Connecticut Sun. And this one got ugly fast. Sun guard JCS Sheldon jabbed Clark in the eye. Guard Marina Mabry shoved her to the floor. The Fever bench erupted and Sophie Cunningham, recently traded to Indiana, flew off the bench to defend her teammate. That single clip of Cunningham charging and went viral and her jersey sales spiked overnight. Fans had been waiting for someone to stand up. Finally, somebody did. But none of those moments compare to what happened in the 2024 playoffs, because that's really where this whole story ignites. Before we get there, let's talk about something a lot of longtime fans noticed that the mainstream media mostly brushed past. Caitlin Clark led the entire WNBA in flagrant fouls drawn during her rookie season. Read that again. As a first-year player, she absorbed more flagrant fouls than anyone else in the league. That is not normal. Rookies, no matter how hyped, don't usually experience that. You can argue it was her playing style, bad luck, or something more deliberate. People will debate that forever. But the number itself is right there in the box score, and it's one of the reasons fans started questioning how the league was really treating its biggest new asset. Then there was the way players talked about her publicly. Angel Reese famously coined the phrase "special whistle" to describe what she believed was favorable officiating toward Clark. Veterans openly said she needed to learn the league and get humbled. Sure, rookie-veteran tension exists in every sport, but the scale of this and how loudly it played out across social media was something new. And later, Sophie Cunningham would suggest the real root of it had nothing to do with basketball at all. Now to the moment that changed everything. September 22nd, 2024. Mohegan Sun Arena, Unisville, Connecticut. Game 1 of the WNBA playoffs. The Fever facing the Connecticut Sun in their first postseason appearance since 2016. On the opposing bench sat head coach Stephanie White. Remember that name because she's about to become the second main character in the story. Less than 2 minutes into the game, Clark threw a simple pass to teammate Aaliyah Boston. Sun guard DJI Carrington lunged to break it up, and her hand with a long acrylic nail caught Clark directly in the right eye. Clark dropped to the floor, clutching her face. No foul was called. Play continued. To be fair here, both Carrington and Clark said publicly afterward that they didn't believe it was intentional. When asked about it the next day, Clark basically shrugged it off, saying it clearly wasn't deliberate. Just watch the replay. So, let's stick to facts, not conspiracy theories. But here's what's also true. The nail did make contact with her eye. She walked away with a visible black eye. She shot just 4 for 17 from the field in a 24-point loss. Whether it was intentional or not, the physical damage was real. And that image, the league's biggest star on the floor holding her face, became one of the most viral photos in WNBA history. The Sun won Game 1. They won Game 2, 2 games, and the Fever season was over. And watching it all unfold from the opposing sideline was Stephanie White, the coach whose team had just sent Caitlin Clark home for the year. If you're a Fever fan, you remember every second of that series, the eye poke, the hard fouls, the bruises. Your franchise player looked like she'd gone through a war. So naturally, the front office's response was, "We need to get tougher. We need a coach who protects our star and finally pushes this team over the top." On October 27, 2024, the Fever fired head coach Christy Sides. 2 seasons, 2 playoff appearances after years of losing. By most standards, she'd done her job, but ownership wanted more. A championship-caliber coach who could turn this generational talent into a title winner. So, who did they bring in? Just days later on November 1st, the Fever announced their new head coach, Stephanie White. Yes, that's Stephanie White. The same coach who 6 weeks earlier had watched from the other bench as her own team sent Caitlin Clark home with a black eye. If you're confused, you're not alone. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended within minutes. Fans couldn't wrap their heads around it. The front office had just hired the exact coach whose defense had physically punished their franchise player. And now she'd be the one guiding her into year 2. Now, in fairness, let's flip to the other side because Stephanie White is far from a random hire. Her resume speaks for itself. Born and raised in Indiana, a high school legend, she led Purdue to a national championship back in 1999, still the only Big Ten women's basketball title. She played 4 of her 5 WNBA seasons with the Fever. She returned as an assistant in 2011 and was on staff in 2012 when the Fever won their only championship. She then served as Fever head coach in 2015 and 2016. Later coached Vanderbilt and returned to the WNBA with Connecticut going 55-25 across 2 seasons with 2 semifinal runs and a Coach of the Year award in 2023. By any measure, this is one of the sharpest basketball minds in the women's game. To the front office, this wasn't a betrayal. It was a homecoming. That's the press release version. But fans don't live in press releases. They live in the moment. And what most Fever fans remembered was their 22-year-old star on the ground holding her face. So, the comment sections were brutal. This is where things get really interesting because an insider finally spoke up. Sophie Cunningham. Quick background on her. She was Missouri's second all-time leading scorer in college, drafted by the Phoenix Mercury in 2019, and spent 6 seasons building a reputation as a tough, physical guard who never backed down. In February 2025, she was traded to the Fever, suddenly sharing a locker room with Clark, and she wasted no time making her allegiance clear. She was the one who flew off the bench during that June 17th incident. Fans nicknamed her Clark's enforcer, and she embraced it fully. In July 2025, Cunningham launched her own podcast, Show Me Something, alongside co-host Wes Wilson. And in the very first episode, she didn't hold back when asked about people claiming Clark isn't the face of the league. Paraphrasing her fired-up response, she said, "It's ridiculous to suggest the league would be where it is without Clark, that there are plenty of talented players, but denying Clark's impact is flat-out foolish." She kept going, essentially saying, "This is exactly what the league has always wanted, and smart people should be capitalizing on it instead of resenting it, because the viewership is literally what's paying everyone's bills." Think about what that really means. A current player on her own show is basically calling out coaches and teammates across the league for holding a grudge against Clark. She's saying the money's up, the ratings are up, charter flights finally happened, and anyone too jealous to admit Clark is behind it is acting foolishly. That's not some anonymous fan account. That's a 7-year veteran. Someone who's actually sat in those locker rooms and heard those conversations firsthand. Now, let's talk more about who Cunningham really is. Because most casual fans slept on her until this story blew up. She grew up in Columbia, Missouri, in a basketball family. Her mom played at Missouri. Both her older sisters played at Missouri, and naturally Sophie followed. She finished her college career as the program's second all-time leading scorer. Drafted 13th overall by Phoenix in 2019, she built her career on hustle, diving for loose balls, setting hard screens, playing the kind of gritty defense every coach loves. She wasn't flashy, averaging somewhere between 6 and 10 points a game, but Phoenix fans adored her physical style. There's even a clip from a 2022 playoff game of her going toe-to-toe with the entire Las Vegas bench that tells you everything about her mentality. When she got traded to Indiana in February 2025, it felt almost too perfect for fans who'd watched Clark get battered as a rookie because Cunningham is exactly the kind of teammate you want protecting your franchise player. She and Clark clicked instantly, constantly ribbing each other publicly. Clearly close off the court. Cunningham even revealed that signing with Indiana was never about the money. She took less to be with people she genuinely wanted to play alongside. That's not a player chasing headlines. That's someone who finally found a team she loves. And that's exactly why her comments about Stephanie White carry so much weight. She's not chasing clout. She's not manufacturing drama. After 7 seasons as a journeyman, she's found something real, and she has nothing to gain by making things up. When she talks about jealousy and what actually happens behind closed doors, she's speaking as someone with zero reason to lie. Here's the bigger picture, though. Cunningham wasn't just defending her friend on that podcast, intentionally or not. She confirmed what millions of casual fans had already suspected for over a year, something the league and mainstream media had largely brushed off as internet noise. But when a 7-year veteran with a championship appearance under her belt says the word jealousy into a microphone, that's no longer a fan theory. That's a professional sharing what she's actually witnessed. And she doubled down. When analyst Skip Biss suggested some of Clark's 2025 injuries were mental, possibly stemming from resentment among veterans, Cunningham shot that down immediately, calling it nonsense and pointing out how mentally brutal it is for an elite athlete to be sidelined. Now, connect the dots back to Stephanie White. DJ Janae Carrington played under White for 2 seasons and even won Most Improved Player in 2024 under her coaching. So when fans see White getting hired, they're not thinking about resumes. They're thinking about Carrington's fingernail near Clark's eye, the missed foul call, and the fact that White never pulled her player or said a word about it. And now that same coach runs Clark's team, that's why fans are furious. It's not just the hire itself, it's everything that hire symbolizes. The backlash on social media was intense. Fans called it betrayal, sabotage. Some even claimed they were canceling season tickets. Local sports radio lit up. National coverage picked it up, too. Now, to be fair, part of that reaction was overblown, coming from people who follow one player rather than the league as a whole. Basketball-wise, the hire made sense. The 2024 Fever actually had the league's best defensive rating per possession. Even though they ranked near the bottom defensively among playoff teams and defense wins championships, Stephanie White built her entire career on defensive excellence. But fans don't watch spreadsheets. They watch their star get poked in the eye with no consequence. They watch their 22-year-old get hammered for 40 minutes while a coach stands arms crossed on the sideline. So, emotionally, even if the basketball logic checked out, the timing felt completely wrong. Then more details emerged. Reports suggested the Fever had already started talks with Stephanie White before they even fired Christie Sides. Whether or not that broke league rules, it looks sloppy to fans. Like the decision had already been made before the previous coach had cleared out her office. Fast forward to the 2025 season, and results were mixed depending on your perspective. When healthy, Clark looked spectacular under White aging. Over 16 points, 5 rebounds, nearly 9 assists, plus steals and threes, earning her second straight All-Star selection. The offense flowed beautifully, but she barely played. A quad injury, then a groin injury, another groin injury, then a fourth muscle injury. She appeared in just 13 regular season games before being shut down entirely. The face of the league sidelined in street clothes for most of the year. Experts debated the cause endlessly. The physical toll from her brutal rookie season, international competition in the off-season, even suggestions it was partly psych. Cunningham shut that theory down hard, calling it nonsense and defending her teammate without hesitation. Still, every time Clark went down, fans connected it right back to the coaching hire, even without solid proof. The narrative had already been set the day White was announced, and every injury only reinforced it. As for Carrington, after her breakout 2024 season under White, she got traded to Dallas as Connecticut rebuilt almost their entire roster. The player at the center of the eye poke controversy left the franchise entirely. While White moved on to coach the very star she'd been connected to controversy with, every highlight reel still shows that black eye. Every time White stepped onto that Fever sideline, fans couldn't help but remember exactly what happened months earlier. Zoom out, and this story is bigger than one coach and one player. This is about a league that spent nearly 30 years fighting for relevance, suddenly forced to figure out how to actually protect its biggest breakthrough. Since 1996, the WNBA has been a grind. Commercial flights, folded franchises, minimal TV deals, kept alive by a small but loyal fan base hoping it would one day break through. And whether you love her or you're tired of hearing about her, the numbers don't lie. Television viewership tripled. Arenas everywhere set attendance records. Sponsorship money poured in. The league itself credited this surge directly to a new media rights deal worth roughly $2 billion over 11 years. That's not fan opinion. That came straight from league executives themselves. So, here's the uncomfortable question this whole story leaves behind. If one player is genuinely responsible for changing the entire financial future of a league, shouldn't protecting her be the top priority? Not an afterthought? That's the situation the WNBA finds itself in right now. And how they handle it from here will say a lot about where this league is really headed. If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really been happening behind the scenes, drop a comment with your take. Share this with someone who needs the full story and stick around because there's a lot more of this saga still unfolding.